Okay, so picture this. You spent like, I don't know, weeks, maybe even months building this crazy complex toy robot. It's got all the bells and whistles. But then, total disaster, right? You hand it to like an excited kid, they pick it up and boom, the arm just falls off.
Yeah, a total nightmare for any toy maker. And honestly, it's like a pretty good metaphor for what happens when software development goes wrong.
Totally, right.
Right.
Like, that's what we're diving into today. We're going to tackle software testing, specifically unit testing and integration testing. And don't worry, you don't need to be a coding whiz to get this. Our source, Understanding Unit and Integration Testing, through a playful analogy by the one Drew Harris, uses that same robot analogy to like break it all down.
It's a good analogy because it really shows how important this is. Testing, it's not just about like finding bugs, It's about being sure about what you're making, building confidence.
Yeah, I like that. Building confidence. So walk us through it. How does this whole testing thing actually work? Like with a robot friend here.
So imagine building that robot piece by piece. Like each part, the arm, the leg, the control system, they all have to work perfectly on their own first, right? That's where unit testing comes in. It's like putting each piece through a super strict quality check before it even gets put together with the rest.
Okay, so like before you even think about attaching the robot's arm, I'm making sure it can rotate, grip things, basically do everything a robot arm should do.
Exactly. You're testing it alone to be sure it's fundamentally sound. And think about it. If you find a problem now, it's a pretty easy fix, right? You're just dealing with the one small part.
Yeah, whereas if you wait till the whole robot is put together and then the arm's like busted, good luck figuring out what went wrong. Total mess.
For sure. And that's exactly why unit testing is so important, especially with these complex systems. Like, the more intricate the robot or the software, the more important it is to make sure each little piece is perfect.
It's like, what's the difference between like checking each board before making a birdhouse versus, making sure every beam in a skyscraper is perfect?
Exactly. The stakes are just way higher when it's more complex. Okay, but now, let's say you've unit tested every single part of your robot. Everything's working perfectly by itself, feeling good.
Oh yeah, on top of the world. Robot building genius over here. But there's a but coming, isn't there?
Well, of course, even if each part is flawless on its own, there's still the question of how do they all work together? And that, my friend, is where we move from unit testing to integration testing.
Okay, so if unit testing is like, making sure each part is fresh out of the box, perfect.
Okay.
Is integration testing more about making sure they all fit together, like that they actually make a functional whole?
You got it. It's about testing the interactions, how each part works with all the others. Like, the robot arm might be perfect on its own, but does it do what it's supposed to when it gets a signal from the control system? Does it move smoothly with the legs?
Okay. So you could have a perfectly good arm aimed at a perfectly good control system,
Yeah,
but they might not actually like speak the same language when you try to put them together.
exactly. And that is where integration testing will save you a lot of headaches and probably some really expensive repairs later on.
Makes sense. So we've got these two big players, unit testing and integration testing, both important but obviously different. What are some of the key differences? So
Yeah.
how do we actually tell the difference between unit testing and integration testing?
Well, our article, Understanding Unit and Integration Testing Through a Playful Analogy, actually does a really good job of like laying it all out. It's like they say scope, objective, even the actual tools you use can be totally different.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But like, what does that actually look like? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, so think of it like this. Unit testing, it's kind of like looking through a microscope, right? You're just focused on this one tiny piece of the puzzle, making sure it's absolutely perfect on its own.
Okay, so like with our robot arm again,
hmm
would a unit test be like checking that a specific motor rotates exactly 30 degrees when it gets a certain command?
Yeah, exactly. Super specific, right?
Right.
But then with integration testing, you're basically putting on your wide angle lens, Like,
Yeah.
you're not so worried about all those tiny details in each part anymore. You're looking at how all the parts work together as a whole.
So zooming back out to our robot, an integration test might be like, can the arm pick up an object and move it somewhere specific? Because that would mean the arm, the control system, probably even the legs are all working together, right?
Exactly. And that difference in, perspective, it changes what you're trying to achieve with each type of test. With unit testing, it's all about that perfect, bug-free performance from just that one component.
So if I was coding that robot arm, a unit test would be like, okay, this little bit of code that controls the grip working perfectly.
Exactly. And then you can build on that. You know if something goes wrong later, it's not because of that bit of code. You already checked it.
It's like when you're troubleshooting a cake that didn't turn out right, at least you know the flour wasn't the problem.
Uh-huh, exactly. But then integration testing, that's like making sure all those good ingredients actually bake together properly.
Or in our robot case,
Yeah.
they don't just turn into a giant tangled mess of wires and metal.
Hmm.
So, okay, we've talked about the what and the why of unit and integration testing, but what about the how?
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets a bit more technical, right?
A little bit, yeah.
But basically, there are specific software tools for each type of testing. For unit testing, you often have tools that can like isolate and test individual functions or modules of code. But then with integration testing, you might use tools that can actually simulate user interactions or data flow through like the whole system.
Okay, so it's kind of like different tools for different jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
But like at the end of the day, it doesn't seem like these two types of testing are like working against each other, right?
Not at all. They're more like two sides of the same coin. Both of them are essential to create really strong, reliable software. Like you wouldn't want an app that looks really pretty but crashes every time you click a button.
Right. No way. That's like putting all that effort into building an amazing robot that just falls apart as soon as you turn it on. But, this whole time I've been thinking, this whole test as you go thing, it seems like it could apply to a lot of other things besides just code and robots.
Wow, absolutely. And that's what makes these concepts so powerful. Whether you're building software, a marketing campaign, planning vacation, it doesn't matter. That idea of testing as you go can be super valuable.
Yeah, it's like that saying, measure twice, cut once. But like for everything. Okay, so you got me thinking about this whole test as you go mindset. How would that actually work, like in a different context? Say you're putting together like a big marketing campaign.
Ooh, perfect example. Let's say you're launching a new website for this campaign. You wouldn't just, throw it out there without testing it first, would you?
No, definitely not. You'd want to make sure like all the forms work and the links go to the right place.
Exactly. Those are your unit tests right there,
Yeah.
checking that each piece is working by itself.
Ah, okay, I see. And then the integration testing would be like making sure the website works with all your other marketing stuff.
Exactly. Does clicking on the ad actually get you to the right page? Does your emails sign up, like actually go into your system?
Ah, so you're testing the whole experience,
Mhm.
making sure it all works together. See, this is making sense even for someone like me who barely understands, websites.
Right. It's about the big picture. Or let's take something even more, relatable, like planning a trip.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you.
Think of it like this. Booking your flights and your hotel, those are your unit tests. Each one's important. Got to make sure it's right. Do the dates match your plan? Are those flights confirmed?
Right. You don't want to get to like Paris and find out your hotel messed up your dates. What a nightmare.
Exactly. But then that's where the integration testing comes in, even for your trip. Have you thought about the travel time between places? Do your activities actually fit into your schedule? Visas, currency exchange, all that stuff.
Wow. Okay, you're making me realize I haven't been doing a very good job of integration testing my vacations.
Well, think of it this way. All those little things that could go wrong. That's what integration testing helps you find before they become real problems.
Okay, that makes sense. So to wrap this all up, what we've learned today, it's not just for like software developers, right? It's a whole mindset. This idea of testing and refining as you go.
Exactly. No matter what you're doing, big project, small project, being creative, whatever, having that critical eye, testing your ideas, making sure it all fits, that's the key.
And probably saving yourself from some major headaches along the way.
For sure. So for everyone listening, here's a thought for you. What are you working on right now? Maybe a new product launch, planning an event, even just like reorganizing your kitchen. How could this test as you go idea help you out? Make it even better, more efficient, just more successful.
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into, well, unit testing, integration testing. Who knew we could learn so much from robots and vacations, right? We'll catch you next time.